People who prevail. That's coming up.
The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by Theraderm. We believe that every person should have the opportunity to look as refreshed, young, and healthy as absolutely possible. Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. Sharp Vision Modern LASIK, believing is seeing. Sciton, because results matter. Fresh Dental, keeping smiles fresh. And Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty. Luxury is an experience, not a price point. And by other sponsors. Hollis Plyman & Company, CPA firm. The Cryo Bar. Cellular Intelligence. Tutu School of Chicagoland. Deluxe Cleaning Services. Chicago Andrea Creative. Goldfish Swim Schools of Chicagoland. Barkbusters Home Dog Training. Instagram My Selfie. And XSPORT Fitness.
How to keep going when the cards are stacked against you. Today, we are learning from tenacious overcomers and hearing firsthand accounts of their amazing victories. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. Our first guest was a very active Ironman competitor until he developed staph infection in his knee that ended his competitive racing. Depressed and in rehab, he turned his life around. Let's welcome out Brian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Whitney.
So staph infection does not go very well with being an athlete and a runner.
No. So 2008, I was training for another Ironman, and I had fluid on my knee, and they kept draining it and taking the test levels, but they, for some reason, didn't diagnose it as being staph. And so this went on like 10 different times, and it was just really frustrating because it's not very fun getting your knee drained.
No.
And so finally, after like 3 or 4 weeks, some other doctor, an internist, somehow saw my records, and they called me up and said, "You need to have emergency surgery tomorrow because you have a staph infection." So I went and did that, and then after that, I had to have antibiotics in my arm for 6 weeks for about an hour and a half a day, and so it was just kind of a miserable experience.
And with that, when you hear you have something wrong, whether it's, staph infection or something less or something more, it still is this like, okay, how is my body going to be changed? And then it goes from there to how mentally is this going to impact me?
For sure. I think, whenever we, suffer injuries or tough things, I mean, it just, I don't know, automatically makes us kind of go into fear mode or kind of worry mode of like, what is my life going to be like after this? And it was that way for me because, I've been racing for over 20 years and a lot of triathlons and
And was
Ironman.
racing kind of like a therapy for you? Like, I know some people that run say that's not just for my physical, it's for my mental health.
Sure. I mean, for me, those long training rides and runs were kind of a form of meditation.
So to hear it was over.
Well, yeah, potentially over. Absolutely. And, and I'd had a knee injury a long time before, which actually kind of pointed me in the direction of triathlon. And so having to go through that again, it was depressing. And, yeah.
And so you're depressed, you're kind of thinking, okay, is this a life change? How did you get to the point where not only did you totally heal mentally, but it changed like kind of your whole direction?
It's interesting. That whole year was a lot of upheaval for me with the knee injury, as well as starting to kind of feel out of out, like I had outgrown my job. I was running my family's business. And so I felt like I had this gift inside of me that wanted to come out, although I didn't know what it was. And I think having the knee injury, just kind of hitting that semi-rock bottom there for a little bit, really forced me to just say, you know what? I'm going to go talk to my dad and tell him that I don't want to do this anymore. even though I really had no idea what was going to be next. So I think they kind of played hand in hand.
So your rock bottom moment was really this moment of like self-discovery of I need more. And what happened after that shift?
Well, as my knee started healing, one day I was still feeling out of balance overall. And so I sat down and I just felt like, why don't you write down 5 things that you know will help keep you in balance during this period? And so I did that. And I wrote them on a piece of paper, stuck it in my wallet. And every day thereafter, I was kind of feeling out of whack. I'd make sure that I was doing those 5 things.
What were some of the 5? I'm so curious.
That's right. Well, some of them are really basic, but just make sure I was getting enough sleep, make sure that I was drinking enough water, which is kind of sneaky because we really do need to drink more than we think.
Yeah.
Make sure that I was getting some daily exercise. And right then, since I was struggling with this, it was basically just walking then. Make sure that I was allowing myself to have some alone time every day. And because I'm actually kind of an introvert and I need to refill my cup probably more than most.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. And then the last was to make sure that I was being creative every day. And back then, being creative was playing guitar.
And so your creative actually took off from there and you like did a whole shift. How did you develop where you were going to go next? Because like you said, not only did you have the knee injury, but then you also said, I need to switch my whole life around. And that's like an obstacle in itself of like a career shift, a total almost like reinvention of who you are.
Totally. I mean, it was definitely a process. And I think I just let my intuition kind of guide that process. So after I wrote those 5 things down on a piece of paper and they helped me, my intuition was just screaming, expand the list and write a book. And I was not a writer, but I just kind of honored that. And it poured through me over the course of a couple months. And so I wrote it and self-published it. And it came out. It didn't sell very well initially because I didn't know how to market a book then. Plus, I was very fearful of speaking in front of people to market it. Then it won a couple of awards randomly, which really shocked me. So I knew that if I wanted to share its message, I needed to overcome my fears.
And the message was in the book. What was the message?
Well, just life balance, the importance of life balance. And I basically wrote down a whole bunch of different things that we can do to help ourselves maintain life balance.
And really, life balance, I feel like, is the biggest obstacle. Like, personally, when people ask, how do you do it? I'm always just like, it depends on the day.
Well, balance is a moving target, so every day is going to be a little bit different, absolutely. But if the more self-aware that we become, then we know what throws us out of balance and what we can do to get us back into that flow. So we all go through the roller coaster, but if we have some things that we know that will help us kind of right the ship, then it makes it easier.
What was your hardest part about that obstacle in your life? Because I feel like there's a few more that have come your way and kind of you have a story of resilience. And what was really a difficult thing about that? And what made you mind shift it into being positive?
Well, I think when I was 3, I told my mom I was put here to inspire people. And after I wrote my book, she reminded me of that. And so I think probably the toughest thing for me during that period was I knew that I wanted to share the message, and so I had to just dig in and start stepping out of my comfort zone in a lot of different ways. And so I did a couple community college speech classes. I did Toastmasters for about a year. I hired someone to co-host an internet radio show with me. I created an interactive workshop around the book, and I thought I was being clever by making it interactive, so I wouldn't have to speak the whole time. But I found out it worked really well that way. And I also took an acting class, just intuitively feeling like these things would help me progress. And as I kept doing those things, other opportunities started happening, and I just intuitively said yes, sometimes, with a gulp.
Yeah.
I was invited to do a TEDx about 4 or 5 years ago, and I had not planned on doing one, but somebody offered it to me, and I just gulped and said yes. And
I like
had
that
3 months to go.
Gulp and
I had 3 months to do it, but I knew with, I just knew that it would work out. I just trusted intuitively that I would figure out what I wanted to talk about, and I would, and I just practiced.
Wow. And now you are an actor. You're like all the time, you do acting stuff. You've written many more books, which again, you weren't an author before all this.
No.
And it's kind of been this gulp, say yes has gotten you over these obstacles.
Yeah, I just follow my intuition and just let synchronicity connect me with, people and opportunities, and just, I'm not quite sure. I feel like I know where it's headed, hopefully on a little bit bigger scale, so I can share, I don't really try to tell anybody what to do. I just try to share what's worked for me.
And then for all of our viewers at home that are facing an obstacle in their life, what advice would you have for them?
Boy, You know, just take care of yourself first. You know, try to become more self-aware with, you know, different things that you can do to stay in life balance, and just heal yourself. You know, however you need to be healed, whatever that means. And also, I always try to tell people, just know that you're enough, just being who you are and what you have to work with. Because if you can get to that place, everything else just falls into place.
Oh, I love that. You are enough. That is some wise words, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up, we have the lead actors from the movie Midway, a box office hit featured around a heroic World War II story. The real-life historic chapter of America's past is centered around military heroes who overcame all odds to shape our freedom. Let's take a look. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time because you wonder, can you pull this off? What was it like training for this?
It was fun. It was fun. It's something that I really love this job. I love the preparation. I love turning over every stone possible and analyzing all of the text and accounts that I could find to try and understand the battle in itself, you know, just from a historical point of view, but then from an emotional point of view, trying to understand how these men may have felt and behaved, and, you know, body language and etiquette and such. But there was a seriousness to what we were doing. There's a sense of duty and responsibility to playing these men from the greatest generation. And I suppose more than responsibility and duty, it was just an honor.
Anytime you play someone that's real, but especially in this, you know, it's not just a real person, but it's someone that affected so many people's lives, saved so many people's lives, gave us the freedoms we have today. So you have to get that right, and it's your duty to get it right.
What is your biggest takeaway from why Dick Best was able to find that courage?
I think it's important to remember that there was so much heroics and so many brave men that it's important to remember Clarence Dickinson and Dick Best, but it's also to remember all of the brave men from this greatest generation.
Yes, collectively unstoppable. Thank you so much for coming on and creating this, laying it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Today's show on overcoming the odds has a lot to do with actually how we react. So today we wanted to take this question to the viewers. How do you handle life's curveballs?
When my father died, 1996, it was rather sudden because we just lost our mother of a heart attack, and he was going to die of pancreatic cancer. And I was a design student at the International Merchandising and Design in Chicago here, and I was pushed to enter this competition in the International Fashion Group. And at this time, I had won. My dad already passed, but I had won the International Fashion Group Foundation competition of the state of Illinois of 39 universities, which I won the first place evening wear designing, and then I won the outstanding designer of the state of Illinois of 39 universities and a fashion scholarship to Paris Fashion Institute, where I've been living since then, since 1996, living in Paris, coming back to Chicago back and forth, and started my own design company, designing between Paris and Chicago. So I'm still struggling with it, but I'm going forward and designing, and I love living in between the two sister cities.
Get social with us and make your voice heard. Add your video on WhitneyReynolds.com or on social. Actress Gina Torres, former star of Suits on the USA Channel, recently launched a new show, Pearson, that focused around her original character stepping out on her own. Let's see how this big detour actually landed her on the perfect road for her journey. I wanted to ask you about the curveball of going from Suits and that ending, leaving the viewers kind of like, oh my goodness, what is happening? And now launching Pearson. What was that like for your character?
I think she's taking it in stride, like so many things that Jessica Pearson does. It was time to move on, and to move on in such a beautiful way, to really go step into a city such as Chicago, to step into a world that is so rich with history, and corruption and challenges and crime, and to really go into that from the perspective of the law, from the perspective of politics and what's happening now, I think it's a great fit for Jessica Pearson.
Well, and then like curveballs in your own life, like whenever things end and start. Did you know this was going to come up whenever you were ending Suits?
No, I had absolutely no idea. There was no iota of a glimmer of an idea for this. I was actually away from Suits for a good year before Jessica started haunting me. She just started knocking on my brain, and that coincided with the 2016 election, and I started thinking, well, what would she be like in that world? What would she be like in the world of politics? And I started sort of working that out, and then I told the right people who got as excited about it as I did, and here we are.
Now with this new show, what will we see? How will it align with what's going on in Chicago?
We pride ourselves on being topical and truthful. You will see a Chicago that is reflective of the real Chicago, not a sanitized version of it. You will see diversity that, again, that I'm very proud of, that is very much reflective of a true metropolitan city. And we're all about representing everyone. Not just the top 5%, but everyone, and how all the decisions that we all make in our lives sort of trickle down to everybody around us.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Overcoming our mindset. Sounds easy, but is it really? Pastor Jarrett Stephen joins us now with how we can mentally move forward. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Whitney. This is fun.
Well, I'm excited you're here because we've been hearing about obstacles and how people overcome them. But you've been helping people for 2 decades overcome some tough stuff and also even overcome some victories in a great way. Like how do you move forward after a big win to keep going? So you have this book. Tell us about it.
Oh yeah, the book is called Praying Through. It's how to overcome obstacles that keep us from God. And that's just true. I think wherever people are at with faith or whatever, all of us face daily obstacles that keep us out of presence with ourselves, with others, and with God. And so that's what the whole book is about, is how to actually not only press through, but actually overcome, like you said.
Well, and that's interesting because you're applying that to prayer, but how could someone apply that to overcome in like another area as well? Like is the book, does it kind of take you through some lessons that our viewers, no matter what season they're in, could use to apply?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, they talk about things like grief. When you lose someone or you lose a dream, a death of a dream, how do you actually, again, not just make it through, but actually overcome in that scenario? Or when you're exhausted, defeated, or depleted, how do you actually press on and press through to something far greater on the other side? And so for me, I think that's what the book is around, prayer, because that has become sort of my inner way of drawing upon a strength, a presence, a power that's bigger than myself. But for a lot of folks, it's a practice like meditation, where when you kind of get still, you get quiet. And for me, my practice is 5 minutes in the morning and then as needed throughout the day.
Right.
And what I found for me is when I get to that space where I get quiet, centered, and still, the big things that are facing me don't seem as big. And the small things that maybe I wouldn't notice are actually seem more important and worth paying attention to, that I might not otherwise see because all I see is the obstacle in front of me.
And it's interesting that you say you have to get kind of silent with yourself. Because we live in a very loud
very
world.
loud world. Yeah.
So how, when you take that deliberate time, do you like set an alarm clock and say like at 7:30 in the morning, I'm going to take 5 minutes for myself? Or is it something that you've just, every day you need it at least twice?
Yeah, so for me, it is the morning that is where the bulk of it happens. And again, I would love to make it sound like I'm a meditation expert. I still fumble and kind of make my way through it. But it's 5 or 10 minutes. And it's with nothing, for me particular, there's no mantra, there's no words, there's no reading. It's just quiet and stillness. Like you said, not only is our world very noisy, I'm very noisy. And so for me to just get quiet and still and to start my day there is a little easier for me. So it's just that. I sit quietly, I'll sit with my hands open or on my lap, and then I'll just take time. For me, that's prayer. Again, others may not want to call it that. They call it meditation, whatever it is. That for me helps everything sort of get into place for the day. And then I mentioned as needed. So there'll be time at work where if I'm feeling stressed or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm helping someone else who's carrying a burden or facing an obstacle, and I just feel overwhelmed by it too, I can just take a minute or two to be quiet and be still. And for me, I'm telling you, it's like a secret superpower that helps recenter things in my life and get a better perspective.
I like where you were just going with helping others too, because a lot of our viewers out there could be in a space where maybe they're not in a hard obstacle, but they know someone who is. How, over the 2 decades that you've been caring for people, have you held that space for them?
Well, I think you just said it. I think that's exactly it. For me, this is such a privilege of the role that I get to play in people's lives. I believe, again, wherever anyone is at with faith, I think it's a sacred thing to stand and hold space with someone who's walking through a difficult season, walking through a unique challenge. And what I've found for me, what I like when people do that for me is when they don't try and coach me. They don't try and fix me. They don't try and give me a pep talk to get me up. They just stand with me as I am and help me remember that there's more than just what I'm seeing or what I'm going through. And that is so, I just think for me, when folks have done that for me, it is invaluable. Just, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be with you as you walk through this. I believe in you. You know, we have a phrase that my wife and I use, and a lot of us use on our staff, is I'm with you and I'm for you. Like, you can count on me to be with you and I'm for you. I want you to win. And so that space to me, again, I think we overcomplicate it. I think we try and feel like we have to fix people. We have to coach them. We have to make them not feel whatever they're feeling, whether it's fear, whether it's grief, whatever it is. I can just be with you in this, and I don't have to make it my challenge, but I'm going to support you as it's your challenge. That is an incredible gift to others. And again, it's something that I feel honored to be able to do and grateful for when others do that for me.
Yeah, I have to say it's a delicate space too, because sometimes you take on other people, but really the way you said it was just being there. And
it doesn't sound all that complicated, but we overcomplicate it.
Yeah, so just kind of under-complicating it whenever people need us.
Yeah.
And then one of the things I want to pull out with the show, because overcoming obstacles doesn't always have to be a bad thing. It can be an obstacle of like, I just reached a very high career point.
Yeah.
How do we keep going even past we think we hit one of our biggest victories?
Yeah. I think this is a very, very, very important human habit, is to be able to celebrate well. It's to be able to look back and go, I did a thing I've never done before. So I want to celebrate what it is and what it was. And then for me, I want to be able to look forward and go, okay, what's next? Because I'm that much smarter, hopefully. I'm that much stronger. I have a bigger and better perspective than I had before this last challenge or obstacle or thing that I overcame. And for me, I think that is what life is intended to be. It is this progression of, okay, I'm ready for more. I'm ready for more. I'm ready for the next thing. And for me, that doesn't happen if I can't look back and honestly be able to celebrate and be grateful for the things that I've come through.
Well, and one of the things I love absolutely about that is that you look forward to the next thing. Sometimes when we get to that victory, we can say like, oh no, is that it? And we create our own obstacles. And I think that's beautiful.
It's self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage, and not to do that. So thank you so much for coming on and coaching us through how to, sustain over a long time.
Yeah, thank you, Whitney.
Our show today is a reminder that we have the power to overcome, and it can start with us. No matter your situation or how your cards are stacked, you can get through, and maybe even with a smile. Remember, your story matters. For more information on today's show, visit WhitneyReynolds.com.
Go beyond the interview with Whitney Reynolds' 52-Week Guide of Inspiration. The book goes deeper with the topics you see on The Whitney Reynolds Show. To get your copy for $12.95 plus shipping and handling, go to WhitneyReynolds.com/store and use code PBS. The Whitney Reynolds Show was made possible by Theraderm. We believe that every person should have the opportunity to look as refreshed, young, and healthy as absolutely possible. Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. Sharp Vision Modern LASIK, believing is seeing. Sciton, because results matter. Fresh Dental, keeping smiles fresh. And Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty. Luxury is an experience, not a price point. And by other sponsors, Hollis Plyman and Company, CPA firm. The Cryo Bar. Cellular Intelligence. Tutu School of Chicagoland, Deluxe Cleaning Services, Chicago Andrea Creative, Goldfish Swim Schools of Chicagoland, Barkbusters Home Dog Training, Instagram My Selfie, and XSPORT Fitness.